Well, hi guys, here we are with Steve Allen. He's on that side of the screen over there waving at you. Some of you may not recognise him. I recognise him because in Peterborough he's a local legend. He has been playing soul music, running entertainments, and now a local councillor and doing good for the community for a long time, as you might say, in one disguise or another. The reason he is on here is because Steve has been to quite a few of the mod clubs in the 60s. He's got some tunes he'd like to share some memories with. So, Steve, take it over to you. Mod, where did it go? Where did it start?
Oh, thanks, Andy. And also let me first of all say great stuff you're doing with your ModShoes business. Fantastic. Great to bring it back to another generation. Okay, so I guess I would call myself an original mod, but second wave. I wouldn't claim to be one of the originators of the scene. That was primarily in the home counties, as you obviously know, coming out of the modern jazz clubs. At that time, I was probably just a young sort of beat fan. The Beatles, the Rolling Stones, they were the bands that motivated us to start going to look at bands such as, I don't know, Downliners, Set, The Action, the Artwoods, all those sort of bands we went to see. But first of all, we heard the cover versions that they were doing. Local bands were doing cover versions of acts like Bo Diddley, Howling Wolf, Muddy Waters, and all of those people. They're the ones that turned me on to black music. I've got to admit the Stones and the Beatles were instrumental in it, but then the real passion came when we discovered these bands that had their own style and kudos, that were not quite so straight poppy, but were interpreting American black R&B music in their own way. So when I say second wave, the first lot were in London town, but like a lot of these trends that start in the capital, they ooze out to the provinces. And Peterborough wasn't too far behind. As a young sort of 14-year-old, 15-year-old going around the city, I was seeing these cool dudes looking great in the gear they were wearing and thinking, oh, I want to be there. I mean, I was probably fairly fashionable with my cord jacket and tab collar shirt and my roll neck, a quasi-young Beatle. But what they were doing was looking much more stylish, so we want some of that. And they were riding great bikes, Vespa GS's, Mark 1, I guess, and those horrible, sorry Lambretta fans, LIs. But they were all part of the scene, and I wanted to be there. And if you want me to sort of, on the back of that, check my first selection, because I've mentioned all these American R&B acts that captivated our attention. And one of the tunes that I think really feels the pulse of that era is Little Waltzer with My Babe. I was the guy that was, I suppose, again, second wave with the scooters. We were the Sportique boys. Okay. They had another name in Italy, but we called them Sportiques. And that sounded really modtastic and sort of stylish, Italiano style, you know. Yeah. So we were on our Sportiques and we were zipping off to Nottingham, the Dungeon Club, the boat clubs in Nottingham, and in Leicester, the Burlesque and places like that. So although we were getting to Nottingham and Stamford and sort of broadening our horizons, where we really wanted to go was London. Yeah, that's always the font of all knowledge when it comes to, you know, modism. And so we would trek down there, do some shopping on a Saturday afternoon to John Stevens, to Lord John, Cecil G, and then get some shoes, mod shoes, from Toppers or from Ravel when they were a decent shop. Yeah. And then in the evening, we'd hang around and we'd go to the Flamingo and to La Discothèque and to the Marquee and to the Scene. It was always the early session of the Flamingo all-nighter that we went to, where the god, Georgie Fame, was playing. But, importantly, the place was full of American GIs and West Indian, Jamaican fraternity. And that's what got me into the next tune we're going to play, when I was hearing that wonderful ska, and that was so exotic, alongside the R&B and the soul music that was coming through. But I've got to give you a little funny. We called ska Blue Beat. Guess why? Yeah, because it was on the Blue Beat record label. But we were silly enough to think that was what the music was called. The DJing started in 1966. Until then, I was just a punter. in Peterborough, there was a guy called Gerard Homan, who was a blues fanatic. And there's a pub in Peterborough called The Crown, long gone under Queensgate. But he started off a Wednesday record session, and he spoke like Mike Raven from Radio City, I think it was. Very considered and new. And it's on the Atlantic record label, and the catalogue number is, and then he would whack it on the decks. And he had a dolly bird next to him with long blonde hair who did the record needle placing. And he would sit on a stool and tell us all about his wonderful records. So it was almost as though he was teaching us, and that's a fact, he was teaching us. As young mods, he was teaching us a new music and its origins and where it came from. And he ran the club on Wednesdays fairly successfully. And I credit him with The Crown, although the two guys that then took it over, I have to give them credit, a couple of guys who were punters at his Wednesday sessions called Nobby and Bunny, who are still, Nobby's gone, but Bunny's still running the mod reunions in Peterborough, so I respect Bunny. And they took it over after about 6 months, moved it to the Friday night, because by then the jazz club that was at the Crown had finished, so they nicked a very commercial night and turned it into a more successful place to be. I mean, I remember going up the stairs and banging out the speakers was Billy Preston with Billy's Bang. And I could have easily have gone with that record as my third choice. But as I could have done Socket 2 MJB, Wade in the Water, Harlem Shuffle, Wang Dang Doodle, Flamingos and things like that. Oh, absolutely. Well, that's what I'm trying to get across, because it's easy for me to be all analytical and tell you lots of great B-sides I've heard. Then about that, the passion that we had from this music, for this music, was driven by hearing things like I Spy for the FBI when they were first out. And first out on UK labels, wasn't a lot of import stuff going on at that time. They were UK releases, and they were very special because they were not mainstream. Well, is this the last of the three? And this is really to celebrate the fact that in '66, having seen the success of The Crown, we opened our own club called the Soul Discotheque at the Falcon, which is now where the Italian restaurant Prezzo is. And Marvin Gaye was a tune that I bought consciously as my first Mod 45 purchase. And that record, Ain't That Peculiar, is still one of my all-time favourite records. But the album on which it sat, which was called The Moods of Marvin Gaye, was full of classic tracks. And the one I've chosen now is One More Heartache. It's so moody.
I can slightly top trump you. I have it on a yellow label just there, so that's the proper American issue. So
good man, good man. The fact is, you went into town and you found friends who were of a like mind. You went to smart coffee bars, which were aspirational. You were drinking cappuccino rather than your old mum's camp coffee. Everything was all about a promising, dynamic future. Carry on, you know, because my musical appreciation didn't stop with mod and soul of the 60s. I've been involved in the jazz funk scene and through onward. And what was that great club at Camden Lock with the DJ Charles Peterson?
Was that Dingwalls?
It was, yes. Yeah. Sunday afternoon at Dingwalls, you went to Camden Lock, and I'm talking about now the 80s. Did a little tour of the market, and then you ended up at Dingwalls, and there was Charles Peterson and Baz for Jazz knocking out some fantastic jazz track.
All that time ago to now, you'd still be talking about the word modernism.
No, I guess I didn't, but I have thankfully, you know, got a long-standing connection with modernism, not just for the appreciation of the music, the style. Hopefully I've taken that with me through my life. But I've also had a business connection with everything modism and soul, because I ran a successful entertainment agency. Leaving the 60s soul, I had then the Cloud 9 Club. I then did the Slickers Club, Jazz Funk, and took that through. So it's only just recently that I've stopped promoting, but I still DJ. Look forward to doing the odd reunion night, which I do from time to time. But as a commercial DJ, I've always been happy to do a wedding reception, you know.
You're better than me. I can't do those. Steve, I'm going to round this off and say thank you for that and hit the stop button. Hold on. Thank you very much, Steve Allen of Steve Allen Entertainments and DJ and Original Mod.